All right, we're going to do something a little different today. We're hopping in a time machine, but not to see dinosaurs or anything like that. We're going back to a year that quietly shaped the digital world we all live in now. 1995. In this explainer, we're going to see the dawn of online education through the eyes of one of its pioneers, Morten Flate Paulsen, and discover how the future was built, one dial-up connection at a time.
So, to really get this, you have to picture what the world was like in 1995. It was a year of some major headlines. You had a rogue rocket that nearly triggered an international crisis. The world was, absolutely shocked by the tragedy in Oklahoma City. On a lighter note, Norway was having a pretty great year, winning both Eurovision and the Women's World Cup. But while all this big, flashy stuff was making the news, something else was quietly bubbling up under the surface. The foundations of our online world were being laid.
And that brings us to our first story. It all starts with a problem every creator still faces today. How do you get paid for your work online? Well, back in '95, long before you could just click a button, the answer involved a 55-page report, a little bit of code, and honestly, a whole lot of trust. What's just so wild about this is how new it all was. So Morten Paulsen puts together this super detailed report on teaching techniques for this newfangled thing called computer-mediated communication. But instead of publishing it in some dusty academic journal, he puts it right on the web as an HTML document, something totally cutting edge back then. And then he decides to try something kind of radical, an idea he borrowed from the software world: shareware.
So, the deal was simple. Incredibly simple. You could read the whole thing, all 55 pages, for free. But if you found it useful, you were asked, on the honor system, to stick $20 in an envelope and mail it to them. Think about that for a second. There's no Stripe, no PayPal, nothing. It's just trust. A completely trust-based model for funding academic work. What a leap of faith, right?
So that's the big question, isn't it? In an era before one-click payments, when you had to physically go find a stamp in an envelope, would people from all over the world, strangers who just stumbled upon this document on the internet, actually bother to send cash through the mail?
And the crazy thing is, it worked. I mean, can you believe it? To his total surprise, envelopes with actual cash started showing up from different countries. This wasn't just about the money, though. It proved that there was this real, global hunger for knowledge about this new field, and people were willing to support it, even in the most old-school way imaginable.
And it wasn't just a flash in the pan. That report, it has been cited over 300 times since then. 300! That's huge! So what this really tells us is that this wild experiment in open access totally paid off. Sharing knowledge freely could have a massive, long-lasting impact.
Okay, so this wasn't all just happening in the digital ether, These pioneers were actually meeting up in the real world. And in June of '95, the leaders in distance education from all over the globe got together in Birmingham, England, for a huge conference.
And listen, this was no small get-together. We're talking over 1,000 people from 80 different countries. This just goes to show you, this whole movement towards distance and online learning was already a global thing, way before most of us even had an email address.
So one of the big buzzwords at this conference was the mega university. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. We're not talking about little startups here. A mega university was any distance learning school with over 100,000 students. Just let that sink in for a moment.
And just take a look at this list. We've got institutions in China, South Africa, India, Spain, all over the map. And this is so important because it's a reminder that large-scale distance education was already a huge deal, serving millions of students, even before the web came along. The internet didn't invent it, it just supercharged it.
But you know how it is with these big events, right? Sometimes the most memorable stuff happens when you're not in a lecture hall. And this conference in Birmingham was absolutely packed with these quirky human moments. This is the good stuff. You've got this rumor going around that Princess Anne showed up, drove her own Rolls Royce, got a parking ticket, and then someone just tore it up. Classic. Then you have people showing up through the brand new Channel Tunnel, which was a huge deal back then. And of course, you have our guy, Morten Paulsen, who buys a tent, and instead of waiting to go camping, he sets it up right there in his hotel room to make sure all the pieces are there. I love that. It paints this amazing picture of a really passionate, and let's be honest, pretty quirky group of people.
All right, so from the UK, our journey takes us to a city that was literally putting itself back together, Berlin. Later that year, in November '95, the very first Online Educa Berlin conference kicked off. And this event would go on to become a huge deal in the European online ed scene for decades.
And you have to understand, the location itself was everything. This was Berlin, just 6 years after the wall came down. The conference was held in what used to be East Germany's Congress Hall. The vibe between East and West was still so different you could feel it. And the conference lunch? Get this, bananas and sandwiches. A far cry from the fancy catering we see today, right? But it shows you this wasn't just another corporate event.
The whole point was the theme, East meets West. The idea was actually hatched in Moscow, and holding it in the former East Berlin was a really powerful statement. This was about using this new technology to tear down walls, to connect people and ideas that have been kept apart for a whole generation. Okay, so we've seen the big ideas, the global meetups, but what did it actually feel like to build an online course back in 1995? Let me tell you, it wasn't about fancy software and easy interfaces. It was slow, it was manual, and you had to get your hands dirty with the code.
And this number right here, this really brings it all back to earth. With all that excitement and all that global travel, the actual number of students enrolled in online courses at Paulsen's institution was just 256. That's it. This wasn't a tidal wave yet. It was more like a tiny stream being painstakingly carved out by a handful of true believers.
And here's what it actually took to do it. You wanted a web page? You had to learn HTML and code it by hand, line by line. You wanted to understand how the web worked? You had to go out and buy your own domain name just to see the process. You were literally writing the textbooks for courses on the internet while the internet was still being figured out. I mean, you even had to argue with people that, yes, even a hot dog stand might need a web page one day. Can you imagine?
And this quote, this just says it all. It perfectly captures the mindset you had to have back then. Everything, and I mean everything, was designed around these massive limitations. You couldn't just drop a video in. You had to actively warn people that a single picture might take forever to download on their squealing dial-up modem, and that their computer might not even be able to show it. It's a completely different universe of design.
So, when we look back at 1995, it becomes pretty clear this wasn't just some random year. This was a foundational moment. This was the year the blueprints for our connected world were being drafted.
From a wild shareware experiment funded by cash in the mail, to these big global meetups in Birmingham and Berlin, all the way down to the nitty-gritty of hand-coding a web page, 1995 was all about human passion and ingenuity. It really proves that innovation isn't just about having the fastest, shiniest tech. It's about what determined people can accomplish with whatever tools they happen to have.
And that's what I want to leave you with. Think about it. These pioneers built the future we're living in with dial-up modems and basic HTML, tools we'd consider ancient artifacts today. So in our world of AI and fiber optic speed, what are the core lessons from that time that we should hold on to? What about their focus on community, their passion for open access, and their sheer grit? What principles from that digital frontier are still absolutely essential today?